Symposium called Technology Advances to Support People Aging with Long-Term Mobility Disabilities. I'd like to take a moment to introduce the presenters for today's symposium. My name is Wendy Rogers, and I am the Kahn Professor of Applied Health Sciences at the University of Illinois. Elena?
Hi, my name is Elena Ramillard. I am the project coordinator for the TechSAge RERC, and I'm based at the Georgia Institute of Technology.
Brian?
Hello, okay. Hi, I'm Brian Jones. I'm a research engineer at Georgia Institute of Technology and working on the TechSAge project as a project director for Gait Speak project.
Thank you. Tracy?
Hi, I'm Tracy Mitzner. I'm also one of the project directors for TechSAge, and I am the presenter today for a Telewellness project, and I'm also at Georgia Tech.
Thank you. Harshal?
Hi, my name is Harshal Mahajan. I'm a research assistant professor in the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, and I'll be presenting on the SmartBathroom project today. Thank you.
Great. And Laura Rice?
Hi, I'm Laura Rice. I'm an associate professor at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, and I am the project director of the Monitoring and Managing Falls project.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Just to start with some general background information, none of our speakers today have any financial conflicts of interest. They will mention some of the additional support that they have for the research that we're presenting today. Just a reminder as well, if you are obtaining credit, continuing education credit, you have to participate in the entire session. The learning objectives for our presentation today, our symposium as a whole, is to tell people a bit about the RERC TechSAge Center, and I'll describe that in more detail. To also learn about novel technologies to support people aging with mobility disabilities. To understand challenges among persons aging with multiple sclerosis. To learn about state-of-the-art smart bathroom, and also to hear about evidence-based health and wellness programs via video conferencing. I'd like to start by describing the TechSAge Center. TechSAge is short for Technologies to Support Aging in Place for People with Long-Term Disabilities. This is a collaborative project between Georgia Tech and the University of Illinois, and it is funded by the National Institute on Disability, Independent Living, and Rehabilitation Research. Our center was founded in 2013. We have a very interdisciplinary team at Georgia Tech and at the University of Illinois, encompassing a lot of different areas of expertise that come together all with the common goal of supporting individuals who are aging with long-term disabilities. Our mission is to support and empower people with chronic conditions and long-term impairments to age in place. And we're doing this through increasing knowledge about, availability of, and access to effective design and technologies that will enable individuals to sustain independence, maintain their health, and engage safely in basic activities at home as well as in the community to be able to fully participate in society. The center is divided into research projects, development projects, and training projects. With respect to, I apologize, there's some delay in advancing my slides. With respect to research projects, we have 3, and we'll be hearing about 2 of them today. The Research 1 project, Needs Assessment and Technology Use, as well as the Research 3 project, which is on telewellness technologies. We also have a project focused on voice-activated digital assistants. With respect to our development projects, the goal is to increase availability to the technology that we're developing. And these projects include the smart bathroom that we'll hear more about today, monitoring and management falls, monitoring management of falls, as well as the Gait Speed project. Those are the three we'll hear about today. There are others that I have listed on the slide here that are part of the center as a whole. We also have training initiatives that are designed to increase awareness of our TechSAge research, as well as general research about design for individuals aging with long-term impairments. And these include online and in-person learning, as well as a TechSAge design competition. We won't have time to talk about those today, but I encourage you to go to our website to learn more about all of the projects at TechSAge. For today's symposium, we will have 5 presentations, each of which will last approximately 12 minutes. I will be presenting first and speaking about everyday activity challenges for individuals aging with multiple sclerosis. And then we will hear respectively from Brian Jones, Tracy Mitzner, Harshal Mahajan, and Laura Rice. I won't go over their titles in depth because they'll present them and they'll introduce themselves when they get started. That's the plan for our symposium today. Hi, my name is Wendy Rogers, and I will be presenting on behalf of my co-authors, Lindsay Kuhn and Elena Remillard, on the topic of understanding everyday activity challenges for individuals aging with multiple sclerosis. I'd like to just provide a little bit of background on multiple sclerosis. I confess this being a new area of research for us, and I've been learning more about it myself. MS is a neurodegenerative disorder that is caused by the demyelination of the central nervous system. Some of the common symptoms of MS include mobility impairment, optic neuritis, painful sensations, as well as partial to complete paralysis. There are multiple types of MS. Relapsing remitting is the most common type, followed by secondary progressive, but 50% of individuals with the relapsing and remitting will transition to the secondary progressive type within 10 years. There's also less common categories of primary progressive and progressive relapsing. An estimated 1 million people live with MS in the United States alone, and most are diagnosed between the ages of 20 and 50, as is evidenced by this distribution graph of the prevalence per 100,000 individuals across different age groups. I would like to note that in 2012, the prevalence for individuals over the age of 60 was 2,400 out of the 100,000. And these individuals who are aging with MS have difficulty with basic as well as instrumental activities of daily living. They have less freedom and inability to travel, or sometimes difficulty in traveling. They have restrictions on social opportunities. They tend to have to plan to a much greater extent than their peers because of their symptoms and associated disabilities. And sometimes they have financial limitations. They tend to need more assistance with housework, shopping for groceries or clothes, traveling to locations out of walking distance, getting in and out of bed, as well as meal preparation. The National MS Society came out with a clinical bulletin recently that focused on issues related to aging with MS. And they talked about the compensatory strategies and the coping methods that these individuals use that enable them to deal with their special needs. But they also talked about unmet needs and the importance of developing interventions that can support these everyday activities. And that's the focus of our project. So our project we refer to as the Access Project, which stands for Aging Concerns, Challenges, and Everyday Solution Strategies. This is a large-scale mixed method study where we're focused on developing a taxonomy of everyday support needs. What is the frequency, the nature, and the distribution of problems in everyday activities that people experience? And what are their strategies for dealing with those challenges? Do they use technologies, tools? Do they get help from others? Do they develop their own creative methods? In phase 1 of the Access study, we interviewed 180 people, 60 in each of the following groups: low vision or blind, mobility impairment, or deaf and hard of hearing. This initial project has recently been published in the Disability and Health Journal focused on the mobility disability group. Now in phase 2, we're adding 3 more participant groups. One is focused on individuals with vision challenges, particularly macular degeneration and glaucoma, the MS group, which I'll be talking about today, and then another group of individuals who are late deaf. As a starting point to begin this project with the MS individuals, we interviewed subject matter experts. Now, this is a well-documented method for obtaining rich, in-depth information. And the goal of our particular SME interviews was to gain insights about the needs of individuals who are aging with MS. And we interviewed people who were advocates, caregivers, family members, or professionals. We were trying to identify the range of challenges that they might experience as a means of informing the development of our comprehensive assessment tool that we're going to use to interview members of these target groups. And so we started by interviewing 3 subject matter experts, one of whom has a PhD in kinesiology, as well as other relevant experience. A second individual who was diagnosed with MS at age 51 and who is now age 61, have been living with it for 10 years already. And then the third has a PhD in rehabilitation science and technology. And these individuals provided us with a wealth of information, first about what are the most challenging activities that individuals aging with MS experience that they wanted us to be sure to include in our access study interviews. Transportation was very commonly mentioned. Individuals may have difficulty driving, difficulty accessing medical professionals that have knowledge about MS. They often have to travel to larger cities to get that type of expertise. And these transportation activities require a lot of pre-planning. One thing to note is that individuals with MS have symptoms that change from day to day and sometimes even within a day, and they don't know what any day is going to look like. Another important activity is just this general lack of accessibility everywhere. Many places they go will have inaccessible parking or spaces that are not easily accessible. Going to churches or other religious services may be inaccessible. Difficulty walking in general, and then specific difficulties with self-care, such as washing hair and brushing teeth. And really, any activity that requires the use of their hands can be problematic. Cooking, holding objects, searching through a bag. So these were particular activities that our SMEs mentioned that were very challenging and that we would want to learn more about. They also mentioned that because of the slow onset of MS, people often acquire secondhand equipment that's not customized and doesn't really support their needs, that there's no critical moment, like if an accident occurs and that's when you have to learn to do things, because it's so progressive. They often don't get training or they don't have the opportunity to learn things like transferring or wheelchair skills. And with respect to assistive devices, most older adults have primary progressive MS, and so they are likely to be using a wheelchair or other mobility device more than 50% of the time, and that's important to be aware of. We were struck by these 2 quotes that really captured the essence of some things we need to attend to in our study. Whereas once they were experiencing on-off symptoms, now in secondary progressive, they experience a new system and it stays, plus the age-related changes that they're having to adjust to. And as I mentioned earlier, this came out of our conversations with the SME. That's the main thing with MS, is everybody feels a little bit different every day. These make the development of interventions challenging, and it also makes it even more important that we understand the range of everyday challenges that individuals aging with MS are experiencing. The other thing that we asked our SMEs about was assistance with recruitment, and I would mention the National MS Society, the Illinois MS Society, as well as other local chapters. Given the state of the world right now, we've moved our data collection to be entirely remote, so we can engage people in our research project from anywhere in the US, in which case we're also interested in looking at the North American Registry for Care and Research in MS. as well as partnering with healthcare providers, neurologists, infusion centers, and so forth. And so I would appreciate those of you who are listening to the presentation today, if you're interested or you have access to participants, if you would share that with us, we would really appreciate that. I'd just like to acknowledge my team. So even though we're having to meet remotely, my lab meets regularly, and this is the group that's working on this project. And please email me at wendyr@illinois.edu if you have any questions or suggestions for our research. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hello, I'm Brian Jones, and I'll be presenting on a gait speed measurement solution in the clinic workflow. My collaborator on this project is Ted Johnson at Emory University in geriatric medicine, and he is the primary reason we're working on this project. Also, as a disclaimer, he's the expert on gait speed, and I'm more the technology expert. So bear with me as I go through the background. In the overview for today's presentation, we're going to cover the problem of why gait speed is needed as a measure in the clinic. We'll then get into designing a solution and validation of that solution, evaluations in a research office and clinics, and then finally next steps. And it's important to understand in the background that by 2030, 1 in 5 Americans will be older than 65 years old. And it's important to make good judgments when considering that. So in healthcare decisions, you want to make sure you're considering function over age, as function has better implications for health decisions. So frailty, excuse me, patients who are frail may be harmed by interventions that would not benefit them. Patients who are robust and vigorous patients should receive care that's aimed at a cure. But the data for function is not typically available in clinics today, at least not as a readily available as a measure. So we've been focusing on gait speed as a possible proxy for function, and slow walking speed, which is less than 0.8 meters per second, can be indicative of function. And 48% of adults over the age of 75 and 99% of those adults over 75 who are frail typically fall into this category of slow walking speed. Gait speed is a useful measure to help predict future falls, self-care ability, and cognitive impairment. And it could even be a predictor for early death. So, oops. In this video that was showing at the bottom of the screen here, and Mrs. W, who is in white, and Mrs. Green in G, are walking simultaneously, and you'll notice that Mrs. White is walking slower than Mrs. G. That has interesting information in the details. So with Mrs. G, she's on these curves of published research, has a survival of about 21 years, so estimated life expectancy, while Mrs. W has an estimated life expectancy of 11 years. Just demonstrating how important gait speed can be when considering clinical decisions. So with that information, we started to search or research what it would mean for us to perform a gait speed measurement in the clinic environment. We developed a survey and conducted that with 25 subject matter experts. From that, we learned that they agreed that at least 76% agreed that gait speed is predictive of functional performance. 68% agreed that it's reliable as a proxy for frailty and a good way to assess progress. As we started asking about what types of devices or solutions they currently use, 90% are using a stopwatch. And as we dug a little deeper, we determined that gait speed is the #1 measure of lower body functional abilities, followed by the timed up and go, which is what tug is. And gait speed is measured on a variety of courses, and that varied from 5 feet, which seemed extremely short, to 400 meters in some cases, or even 6 minutes as typical ways of testing gait speed in this population. With that in mind, we set out to develop a couple of options for measuring gait speed in the clinic. We looked at an app that could not only measure gait speed, but you could change the distance on the track. You could then pull up some of those estimations that I shared in the previous slide, showing life expectancy and 5-year survival. And we also developed a device that would go on the wall in the clinic and measure gait speed by touching the screen and walking. We put those in front of clinical staff, 10 clinical staff at 2 different at 2 different clinics, to total 10. These are registered nurses, licensed practical nurses, and medical assistants who conduct patient intake assessments. The goal was to determine their preferences and understand what they liked or disliked about each of these systems. And with those results, so with those results, we discovered some useful information about what they liked and disliked about each one. One, with respect to the app, they didn't like having another device or another app that they had to work with. So they tended to lean toward a dedicated device in the clinic, much like you would use a scale or measuring height or similar. For patient safety, they were worried about fall risk, and so wanted to be close to the patient as they're walking, depending on the frailty of the individual. And then they were concerned about the burden of the workflow. So we took those into account as we were designing our solutions. One other point I wanted to make on this slide is that the staff did agree that gait speed measurement had value and expressed willingness to measure it. So that was really important. And then we looked at the competing solutions. So there's the top right picture here indicates someone conducting the NIH Toolbox 4-meter walking speed gait test. And we actually used that as our baseline as to how to conduct a test. And a 4-meter test is a typical one that's used in the research setting. At the bottom right is a pressure mapping walkway. Now these vary by about $80,000 in cost. So the one at the top is a stopwatch you can get for probably $10 at a Walmart. You may want to go with a more reliable one, but the one at the bottom, the walkway, it comes in about $80,000 and requires a dedicated space and a dedicated operator in the clinic. So our solution for the wall-mounted device, we focused on some of the feedback from the nurses in our focus group, and came up with a 2-sided solution that involves screens on both sides, a dedicated button for starting it or activating the system. And then in the center are 2 sets of sensors to give us a reliable measure whether someone's close to the device or even further away. We also designed it around a 4-meter measured walking area, and then 1-meter acceleration on the starting end and 1-meter deceleration on the end of that walk area. So 6 meters total. This is an example, this picture on the screen is an example of how it would look in the clinic environment. There's the screen in the foreground with a large blue button underneath it. The screen is also a touch screen, so that could be used, and it provides instructions as well as a readout. The sensors can be seen further down the wall at that 1 meter from the screen, and then a 4-meter spacing between the sensors. And beyond that, you can see the identical box, touch screen and blue button at the far end of the hall. I also put in a demonstration of what it would look like if it were flush mounted, as we had to do temporary installs in all the clinics, but it would be a much more polished look, and hopefully the aesthetics would not be a concern as we get this in as a product. So this is a video demonstration. We'll see how well it plays. This is actually Ted Johnson is our patient, and they will read the instructions and then conduct the test. And then here's an example if they were to walk with the patient as a way of ensuring their stability. So as we move forward here, we actually, with that solution, we took that into one of the clinics in the area that has a walking mat or pressure mapping system in their clinic, and performed some validation tests. This screen shows the individual on the track with the sensor on the wall behind them alongside the track. And then we tested also with not just that sensor and the pressure mapping floor, but also the app that we had. So we had something like a stopwatch, the device on the wall, and the pressure mapping floor to compare, and came out with the device and the mat, the pressure walking map, were much closer than the app versus the map. So that was like a test of, if you looked at the app versus the mat, you're getting the human error from that, whereas the device was giving us a little more precision when we're using the mat as that gold standard. Okay, and then just some fun pictures with validation results. I won't get into detail on these because I need to move on, but the validation results showed different speeds of the individuals. They showed how well they correlated, and then we then moved to a research setting where we got feedback from researchers. They had some great feedback on how to improve the system with its audible and visual feedback, how to improve the instructions. They gave us good feedback on what they didn't like. So we built that into our interaction with the button, made it a one press activation where you press the button and it arms the system, and then it just captures the speed as you go by. We also took it to this clinic that you saw in the demonstration video. It was a temporary install. We really provided no information to the clinic staff up front. And so that was some of the feedback we got, was they would have liked to have had human instruction. And and then the staff wanted, they really didn't look at the instruction sheet. They wanted that to be part of their onboarding process. And so as we move forward, we're reconsidering how, some of the issues that we've experienced where power outlets aren't available, or the training of the nursing staff, and seeing how we can improve on that as we move forward. The feedback we got from the clinic staff, they prefer, as I mentioned, they preferred the onboarding process. They wanted that training up front, and they wanted the usability. They felt it was very simple to use, but without that training up front, there were some people who got a little confused the first time they used it. And they very much wanted explanation of what to say to the patients. Patients would often ask questions and they weren't sure how to respond. So great feedback, and we'll continue to move forward looking for other clinics to partner with. So if anybody in our audience is interested in partnering, please contact me. And I have to wrap up. So this was just images of the app that we put together, a little more polished, showing the start screen or the landing screen, and then some help instructions, measurement with just course, changing the course measure, and then that measurement with different ages and gender to get the estimated survival, those estimated survival results. Thank you, and I look forward to your feedback.
I'm Tracy Mitzner, and today I'm going to be talking to you about Tele Tai Chi, lessons learned and initial findings from deploying a remote evidence-based exercise intervention. And I'm presenting on behalf of my co-authors, Elena Remillard, Kara Cohen, and Leila Cochran. I also want to just mention our partner for this project is the Tai Chi for Health Institute. So we're focusing on an exercise intervention because less than 1/3 of older adults with a mobility disability engage in recommended physical activity levels. Lack of physical activity is associated with hypertension, diabetes, anxiety, depression, and risk of dementia and mortality. This population is also at risk for social isolation. And there are significant barriers to participating in exercise classes for this population, including lack of accessibility and transportation, and also fear of negative stereotypes. So one solution is remote exercise instruction. These used to be VHSs and DVDs, but now it's really moved to apps and online streaming websites. So as most of us are aware, especially with COVID, there are many, many of these apps, but most are not designed for people with mobility disabilities. And most don't have a social engagement aspect that in-person groups offer. So in addition, as we all know, COVID has really amplified some of the participation barriers, especially with this population. So our project is called Telewellness, and the goal is to demonstrate the acceptability and efficacy, especially for social interaction and physical activity and physical exercise, of a remote group evidence-based Tai Chi class for older adults with long-term mobility disabilities. So our population is focused on people who are aging with mobility disability. There are people between the ages of 60 and 80, and they have self-identified as having a mobility disability for at least 10 years. So this is really the intersection of age-related changes and mobility disability. So some of the populations include people with MS and people who have post-polio. Some of our earlier research suggests that this population does have positive attitudes about attending exercise classes using teletechnologies. So today I want to give you an overview of some of the adaptations that we've made to translate an in-person intervention to a remote intervention. I'm going to talk about the intervention components, the intervention study design, and also some of the adaptations we made based on our pilot testing. First, in terms of the intervention component adaptations, we used a evidence-based program. It's called Tai Chi for Arthritis, and it's seated. And this was developed for older adults with a range of disabilities and chronic conditions. Its evidence-based benefits include fall prevention, joint pain, balance, and flexibility. It's a 1 hour, 2 times a week for 8-week program. And we are partnering with Dr. Paul Lamb, who developed this program for the study. We're using Zoom, which probably everyone's familiar with now. We're using Zoom as our platform to provide this intervention. So if we were to design a in-person intervention, we might do a screening, a baseline assessment, then have the intervention. In this case, in-person exercise class that would probably have some informal social interaction, and then post-intervention and follow-up assessments. So in transitioning to a remote experience, what adaptations are needed to create a safe social opportunity and also provide the needed tech support? First of all, we've added an orientation. This orientation is meant to focus on technical training, also some safety issues, and I'm going to talk more about that in a minute. We also created more of a structured intervention. So we wanted to make sure we built in time for the technology setup, any issues, make time for the social time, and then we have the video lesson of the actual content of the exercise intervention, more social time, and then an exit survey. So what are the technical requirements to do this translation? Well, one, we need to stream pre-recorded video from the evidence-based program that's from their website. We need to enable group discussion before and after the lesson. What we also learned is we need the streamed video of the intervention and the group discussion to occur in the same program or window or tab. We started when they were in two different windows, and it was really too complicated for people to go back and forth. We need to accommodate a variety of user devices and browsers. We need to be able to administer remote post-class surveys and assessments. We need to be able to accommodate those with less technology experience, and we need to ensure continued access to all of our instructional materials and resources. So to accomplish some of these first requirements, we chose Zoom. We reviewed other platforms, and Zoom was the only one that could really meet these needs, especially of streaming video at a high enough quality and allowing for the group discussion also. So as most people are doing now, if they can, all of the assessments are going to be either online or over the phone. And we have quite a few protocols in place to provide appropriate instruction. And I'm going to talk more about that in a minute. Lastly, we created a web page that I'll show you where we have access to all of the materials needed to participate in the study. So in terms of the instructional materials, first we have step-by-step instructions on how to join a video class on Zoom. We also have Zoom frequently asked questions, so participants can access those. So as I said, a lot of the training takes place during an orientation session. So this starts on the phone, so we're able to really walk them through getting online to Zoom and provide them one-on-one. These are one-on-one orientation sessions, and provide them that one-on-one training. It also gives them an opportunity to practice. So they'll have the manual, but they get to practice with a study team member how to mute, how to start and stop their video, etc. Also in the orientation session, we review an environmental checklist where we ensure sufficient lighting, no background noise, sturdy chair or wheelchair from which to participate, a flat surface for the computer, that people have enough space to move their arms, that the floor is free of clutter, and that they are going to participate in a place where they are within reach of a phone or alert device. As I mentioned, our study webpage, this is a place where they can find all of the materials they might need. So the informed consent, an overview of the study, how to contact us, the video class support materials, Tai Chi support materials. So this links them to the all of the online resources for the Tai Chi for Health Institute, and also some specific, just the specific exercises, the instructions for those that they'll be doing. And lastly, we created a welcome video in collaboration with one of the master trainers for this program to really focus on this specific population and what modifications they might need to know before they get started to practice safely. So we also made some protocol logistic modifications or adaptations. One has to do with social time. What we found, and these are based on our pilot testing. So we found that we need an etiquette guide for the social time. What are what topics should be off limit, like politics, and just to help guide people, make them feel more comfortable during the social time. We also realize we need a way for them to interact one-on-one with each other. So we are encouraging them to use chat to communicate one-on-one so that they're not trying to have a one-on-one conversation during the social time. And then in terms of safety, we are going beyond that welcome video that focuses on safety and adaptations, or I should say exercise modifications. And we really realize the importance of repeatedly reminding people that everyone has different abilities, that they need to stay in their comfort zone, and also just remind everyone of the option to visualize the movements instead of physically make them. What we also learned from pilot testing was that the target population is excited for this opportunity, not just to exercise, but also to meet and meet peers and have some social engagement with them. And of course, the timeliness of this project with COVID is such that people are excited to have an opportunity to do something from home. Lastly, I just want to mention that with all of our adaptations, we're engaging in a very structured process. We want to make sure that we adapt the intervention, but without impacting the fidelity of the intervention. So where every change we make, we're documenting it and notating why we make the change. And we're also adhering to the CDC framework for adapting evidence-based programs, where we use different criteria to decide what we should change and what we shouldn't change. In terms of takeaways, I just want to leave you with this idea that teletechnologies hold great potential to facilitate health and wellness programs for people with mobility disabilities. And the level of acceptability that we're hearing suggests that we are addressing an important unmet need. In terms of adaptations that are important to think about, that first of all, in terms of the study design and the protocol, so being able to add in orientation for the technical part especially, and then also thinking about how to kind of mimic, it's not the right word, but try to parallel somewhat this idea of social, the informal social time that happens, and bring it into an online format. Also, the adaptations are many. They include, the technical support documents are many. They include documentation, training, but also infrastructure, having that web page where people know where they can go to get any materials that they might need. And of course, the importance of safety protocols and having safety be a primary concern and consideration when making all of the adaptations. So as we enroll people in the study, we may continue to adjust and adapt throughout as needed, but we'll continue this structured adaptation process. We'll also include experts, target users, and partners in deciding whether to make any adaptations, and we're documenting all of those adaptations. So I want to thank you. If you have any questions or comments, my email is here, tracy@gautech.edu. And thank you for your time today.
Okay, I'll get started. Hello, everyone. I would like to present today on the Smart Bathroom project on behalf of the project directors, Brian Jones and John Sanford. My name is Harshal Mahajan. I'm a research assistant professor in the College of Applied Health Sciences in the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. So, So why study toileting and bathing and transferring activities? So these are very important ADLs, activities of daily living that require a significant number of functional abilities, a wide range of abilities actually. More importantly, a loss of independence in these activities is highly associated with decreased community participation, increased caregiver burden, and several other issues. What is also been seen from previous research is that persistent problems in these areas, in these activities, can lead to increase in risk of falls and injuries, and increase in risk of developing a fear of falling or activity limitation, activity avoidance. And we know that bathroom environment being very congested, with lot of hard surfaces, etc., these injuries and falls can be really problematic and serious. So the goal of the Smart Bathroom study is primarily to study and simulate transfers, bathroom transfers. The specific goals are to design and build a system where we'll use embedded sensors and automated control algorithms to evaluate transfer performance. We'll also perform studies to simulate toilet transfer, tub transfer, and then it will generate a good, a rich database of transfer performance, both sensor data as well as video data. We are also developing on the clinical assessment side, we are developing visualization tools that will help an occupational therapist to observe a transfer and then rate the transfer, systematically analyze the transfer, and also to annotate the transfer performance. Eventually, in the long term, I think the project will also develop smart algorithms where these smart systems in the bathroom environment can automatically adjust to the person's needs related to gait, balance, and posture deficits. Eventually, we will also evaluate the effectiveness of the smart toilet and the smart bathtub systems. So just a quick overview of the different systems that we have installed in the smart bathroom. The smart floor is an instrumented sensor array which has these laser cut panels which has about 10 load sensors each, and they have like a 200 pound maximum load capacity. These arrays actually give a wide coverage of most of the bathroom floor to give very specific center of pressure measurements when the person is walking or rolling in a wheelchair. Then we are developing a smart bathtub. So the bathtub smart bathtub essentially is a regular bathtub, regular size bathtub installed in a frame. As you can see, the frame allows the bathtub to be on the floor or close to the ceiling, so it can be moved up and down. Also, the grab bars that are in the bathtub area can be adjusted. The angle of them can be adjusted, and there are force sensors that measure forces and moments at those grab bars. The smart toilet, this is primarily what I'll be discussing later today. So the smart bathtub uses a motorized toilet system from this company, Presolid. This system allows the commode seat to go up and down. And we have made modifications to it, like we have installed what we call smart grab bars, where we have upgraded their system with our custom designed sensor arrays that are installed on the grab bar at different points. So it can also measure the load and movements that are exerted on the grab bar, as well as it can detect where the person is applying the force on the grab bar, what kind of grip they are having on the grab bar, and what kind of placement of the hands that they have, etc. So a little bit about the pilot study. So our inclusion criteria for this study was individuals who are ambulatory with or without a mobility aid, who are 50 and up, age of 50 and up, and they should be able to transfer independently or under minimal supervision. So FIM score of 5 to 7. So what we did is we adjusted our grab bars to a default configuration, which is toilet height 18, grab bars height of 32 inches, and then the width of the grab bar was 14 from the center of the toilet, so 28 inches wide. So this configuration was from our based on our previous study, where this was the most preferred and the most easily configuration which has the most ease of use reported in our previous work. So we want to compare that to some other preferred configurations that people would try to develop in this, or try to select in this system. So we allowed them to perform several transfers using the default configurations as well as their own optimally selected configuration. And for each of the transfer that they performed, they reported their level of ease and level of comfort during the transfer activity. So the protocol essentially was they walked down a hallway, entered the bathroom, transferred on and off the toilet seat, and then walked out. And then we had several sensors along the way when they walked and approached the bathroom, and also in the bathroom. So some of the sensors were people had like wearable mobility gait sensors from APDM Mobility Lab. We performed the timed up and go protocol. We also have some other quantitative gait measures and postural sway measures from that system. We had a gait speed assessment system. We also had Kinect cameras along the hallway as well as in the bathroom that gave like a automated estimation of the person's pose as well as analysis of their movement. So in future, actually, these quantitative metrics will be really helpful for us to improve our automated detection algorithms. So some preliminary results. So we are still analyzing the data, but these are some initial results that we have. The most interesting result was that most of the participants that we had selected their toilet height taller than our default configuration. So just a comparison, the ADA range is the highest you can go with the ADA recommended toilet height is 19 inches, but people usually went all over, like more than that also. So also the second result was people who reported higher level of ease and comfort during transfers when they had their self-selected or preferred configuration versus the default configuration, which was expected, but it was really nice to see that the difference was quite significant. Also, everybody who selected the taller toilet height also selected like a wider grab bar widths. Lastly, people who had higher gait cadence speed also reported a higher level of comfort during the toilet transfers. So overall, I think this gives us some ideas and some interesting trends that we will actually explore as we go further with more studies, and we'll look more into the data from the sensors and other aspects of information that we have. So another area of work that we are seeing is basically visualizing how a transfer takes place, both from the video as well as on the sensor. So on the right, you see how the center of pressure changes when the person shifts weight on the toilet seat and also on the floor. So this tool is actually quite interesting because it can give like an occupational therapist visual representation of the transfer as well as how the sensors behave in a very graphical and easy to understand way. And they can make their clinical assessment based on this more precisely. So our team is basically also developing a systematic analysis tool to evaluate specific subtasks that are involved in a sit to stand and stand to sit transfers. So these are some of the subtasks that we have split, and then you could see how the sensor readings change over these tasks. And then we will have some some values that the clinicians can use. So our colleagues, Lee and Bhattacharya, both of them are occupational therapists. So they are developing this transfer performance assessment tool based on an ICF-based framework. So the idea of this tool is to be like an observational assessment for sit to stand and stand to sit transfers. One of the problems we experienced earlier while looking at the literature was there was no good validated measure for systematically analyzing how the individual subtask of the transfer could be evaluated, and more importantly, how environmental feature plays into performing the activity, performing the subtask. So in our case, it's primarily focused on grab bars. So how do grab bars play a role in each of the subtasks within this big activity of transfer? So this tool will basically evaluate this subtask based on factors like balance, safety, use of environmental features, like level of physical effort, self-reported effort, what is the fluidity of the movement, how does the center of mass change, things like that. So our preliminary analysis with this tool showed a very high inter-rater reliability between the two raters that tested it. So in the long term, the expected outcomes that we will have is to develop a transfer lab for occupational therapists to evaluate transfers. We will have a rich data set of sensor and video data of bathroom transfers. We will also have algorithms which can do automated assessment of the transfer performance, and also in the long-term marketable products for short-term and long-term monitoring. So I think that's all from this project. Please feel free to call me at this address and any of the project directors. So thank you.
All right, well, welcome. My name is Laura Rice, and I'm an associate professor in the Department of Kinesiology and Community Health at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. And my project is focused on developing a fall detection system to monitor and manage falls. And my co-investigators on this study are Peter Presti at Georgia Tech, and then Jacob Sosnoff and Harshal Mahajan at the University of Illinois. So the purpose of this project is to develop a multi-component customizable fall detection system that will accurately detect falls among long-term wheelchair users and notify caregivers to enable a quick response and reduce the amount of time an individual spends lying on the ground. So for the purposes of this project, I'm going to give some brief information on the reasons why we're developing this device and focus more on our current stage of research. So the biggest reason of why we need to develop a device like this is because falls are very common. So among wheelchairs in general, about 60% will have a fall over their lifetime. And then when we look at other populations, this can vary. So for example, among individuals with multiple sclerosis, our research team found that about 75% reported at least one fall over a 6-month period of time. And this is in comparison to ambulatory older adults, where about 30 to 40% of the population will experience a fall per year. In addition, falls can be very dangerous. Almost 70% of fatal wheelchair accidents are due to falls. So of course, the first line of defense for falling is to prevent falls from occurring in the first place. However, there's really limited peer review research on how to prevent falls from occurring. And also, regardless of how well you try to prevent a fall, something's always going to happen. Something's always going to come up. So I really see this project as part of a comprehensive fall management plan. So we identify fall risk, we do interventions to prevent falls, but we really need this safety net at the end to deal with the falls that are still occurring. So after a fall occurs, there's about 4 things that can happen. So the thing we think about the most is physical injury. Then after the person's down on the ground, there's a period of time when they're lying on the ground, then they have to get up, and then kind of a long-term aftermath could be developing a fear of falling. So while this project really doesn't do a lot for preventing the actual injuries that occur due to the initial fall, it can help with the other 3 items. And I'm gonna just briefly touch on those. So the first thing we're looking at is lie time, so the amount of time that a person is on the ground. And previous research has shown that the amount of lie time can be predictive, especially if a person's on the ground for over an hour, of future falls, decline in performance of activities of daily living, increased hospital admissions, and also admissions to long-term care facilities. Our team looked at lie times among wheelchair users, and we found wheelchair users were typically on the ground for about 9 minutes. While this isn't an extended period of time, if you consider an individual who maybe has decreased sensation, limited blood perfusion, being on the ground, perhaps on a hard surface, out in poor weather conditions, that 9 minutes could be a very long amount of time. So we need to summon assistance very quickly. Also, getting up after the fall can often be very challenging. And previous research has shown that people who need assistance to recover after a fall or get back up have lower quality of life, can sustain serious injuries, or even more pronounced to death. So our team looked among wheelchair users to see the number of individuals who needed assistance with recovery, and almost 80% of wheelchair users did need assistance. And this is compared to about 50% of ambulatory older adults. We also found that among manual wheelchair users, people who required assistance to recover had lower reports of community participation. Finally, fear of falling is more of a long-term consequence of falling. One of my students a couple years ago looked at this item among almost 70 wheelchair users. Of those individuals, about 60% reported a fear of falling. And of those individuals, about half of them reported that they stopped doing activities because of their fear. He also found a relationship between fear of falling. With increased levels of fear of falling, quality of life decreased, and so did control over participation. So a lot of you might be thinking, well, there's a lot of devices out there already on the market, but those really aren't designed for wheelchair users. Our previous research has found that falls from a wheelchair are very different from falls in a standing position. So the devices really don't accurately pick up those falls. And we've done some testing in addition with some off-the-shelf devices and found that they only pick up about 3 to 4%. In addition, there's limited use of self-triggering devices. People don't tend to use those a lot. And as you can see in this picture, this device is pretty obtrusive. And also there's often limitations of who can be notified, often only 911. So what we are trying to do is to develop a product that can help reliably summon assistance, allow the end user to have the ability to select who's called, can use it with a lot of different devices, and also preserve dignity. And this would help to prevent long lie times, enhance confidence, and help with aging in place. So I'll look at a little bit at our research we're doing. So we finished up phase 1 in early spring. The first part of the study, we were just looking at what these fall patterns look like from a wheelchair. So we had 30 able-bodied individuals falling out of wheelchairs. We had our, I'm so sorry. We had our participants fall in different directions, so backwards, forwards, and then to each left and right. In addition, we had participants do various activities of daily living that we thought might be confused with a fall, like transfers, pushing over rough surfaces, and going off curbs. So right now we're in phase 2 of the study, where we're developing a prototype of a custom fall detection system to identify falls and notify caregivers or emergency professionals. So in this phase, we're annotating the data, we're training an algorithm, and then also building this custom sensor and notification system. And this work is primarily being done by my colleague, Peter Presti at Georgia Tech. So what we did to develop the algorithm, we used the data from phase 1, and each of the 30 participants, they did 24 different trials. They did four fall trials, 4 activities of daily living, and repeated those 3 times each. We synchronized all this data from accelerometers and force plates and kind of captured these 4-second windows of time so that we could investigate the features of those. So from these 4 second trials, we gathered a variety of features from the X, Y, and Z axis. And this would help us to understand the patterns associated with falls and activities of daily living. So from this, we gathered 38 features from each of the accelerometers that we used. And then these features were further reduced down into kind of a classification of fall versus no fall. And from these classifications, we use this to train and test a classifier. But after doing the initial classification, Mr. Presti was concerned that we did not have enough data from activities of daily living. So he was actually able to pull some additional activities of daily living from a database. And this was able to increase our data set significantly. So what we did in order to train the recognizer without the fear of overfitting the data, we used the neural network classification engine. And then Peter separated the set of data into 2 groups. He had 80% used to train the algorithm and then 20% used to test it. And then you can see on the screen the confusion matrix showing the results of the testing, and all of the falls that were put in that testing data set were able to be accurately detected by the algorithm. So then the algorithm was integrated onto an embedded processor of a mobile device in the form of a smartwatch. This is just kind of an initial device we're going to use for our initial testing. The smartwatch connects to a cell phone via Bluetooth. And the person primarily, though, the participant primarily interacts with their smartphone. This is where they can set up who they want the device to call, cancel any alerts that might come up in error. So they really don't have to interact with the smaller device itself. In addition to this, we performed interviews with participants in the target population. So far, we've done 7 participants so far, and our goal is to do 15. These participants are 60+ years old. They use a wheelchair or scooter for at least 75% of their mobility. And they've used their wheelchair or scooter for at least 1 year, able to understand or read English, and also have a self-reported fall history. And I think it's important to note during our recruitment, we told participants that we could either do this interview via video conference or over the phone, because we're really trying to get a wide variety of users who have different levels of comfort with technology, not just all people who would be comfortable doing a video conference. So for our preliminary results, the majority of the participants said that they would like a small, sleek watch-like device. They were fine with wearing the device all day, charging it overnight. They primarily would like their care partner to be notified when a fall occurred instead of emergency services, but we could give them the option of doing both. And they really like the idea of being able to disable the call, and they wanted actually about a 5-minute window to be able to disable that call. So our next steps are to do additional testing. In phase 3, we're going to evaluate and refine the prototype. We're going to give the device out to 30 individuals and have them use it in the community for 3 months. We're going to be in close contact with them. If they fall, we're going to ask them to call us and vice versa. After we do that, we're going to have them do some assessments on usability, and then we can fine-tune the device based on their feedback. And then finally, we are going to test a much larger group, to almost 230 individuals. We're going to give the device to the participant to use in the community for 18 months. So we're going to be able to do much larger assessments looking at sensitivity and specificity. Also, we can look at the impact on a person's quality of life, community participation, fear of falling with using the device. Because we have so many more people, we're going to count on the participants more to track their own falls, but we will call them every other week to check in. And then when they're done, we're going to do some assessments on usability and also some interviews with the participants. All right, thank you so much. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to email me. And this is a picture of my lab. It's definitely a pre-COVID picture though, I promise. Thank you.